Along the wild southern edge of Australia, where the Southern Ocean crashes unbroken against limestone cliffs, a creature has survived almost unchanged for millions of years. It has no claws, no mercy from the current, only a spiked shell and the patience of the deep. This is the southern rock lobster, and its journey from these cold waters to the finest tables in the world begins long before any boat leaves the harbor. Go discover the full journey of the southern rock lobster, from Australia's coast to fine dining tables around the globe. The story starts off the coasts of South Australia, Victoria, and Tasmania, where the Southern Ocean stays cold enough, even in summer, to support one of the most prized crustaceans on Earth. Unlike the king crab hunted in Arctic waters, this lobster has no claws at all. Its only defense is a hard, spiny shell and powerful tail muscles that can propel it backward in an instant burst of speed, enough to escape most predators, but not enough to escape a well-placed trap. Southern rock lobster can live for decades, and like all crustaceans, it can only grow by molting, splitting its old shell and emerging soft and vulnerable until a new one hardens in place. This single biological fact shapes almost every rule in the fishery. Fishermen can only legally keep lobsters within a strict size range, ensuring the animal has already had the chance to reproduce at least once before it ever reaches a boat. Before dawn, fishing vessels head out from small ports like Port Lincoln, Robe, and Beachino, carrying stacks of wire and rope pots. Each boat sets anywhere from 5 to 30 pots per run, baited with fish scraps, then lowered to depths that can exceed 100 meters. Unlike net fishing, pot fishing is selective by nature. A lobster has to walk in on its own, drawn by scent alone, giving the fishery one of the lowest bycatch rates of any wild seafood industry in the world. When the pots are hauled back up, the real skill of the trade begins. Every lobster is measured against a legal gauge on the spot. Anything undersized, or any female carrying eggs beneath her tail, is returned to the water immediately, a rule enforced as strictly by tradition as it is by law. What remains on deck is sorted again, this time by color. Shallow water lobsters tend to come up a deep, vivid red, while those pulled from deeper, darker water often have a mottled, paler shell, known in the industry as brindle. This difference is far more than appearance. Red lobsters are the ones most sought after in the Chinese market, where the color red is tied to luck and prosperity, making a bright red lobster worth noticeably more at auction than a brindle one of the exact same size. Researchers studying the fishery have also found that brindle lobsters tend to be more sensitive to the stress of being out of water, meaning color affects not just price, but how carefully each animal has to be handled on its journey to market. Once sorted, lobsters are moved into holding tanks built directly into the boat, where circulating seawater keeps them alive and calm for the 1 to 3 days it can take to finish the fishing run. This is where a fisherman's entire trip either survives or does not. A lobster that arrives at the dock, stressed, dehydrated, or overheated, loses significant value the moment it is unloaded, regardless of how large it is. At the dock, live lobsters are transferred into crates lined with damp hessian sacking, an old technique still used today because it keeps the gills moist without submerging the animal in standing water, allowing it to survive out of the ocean for far longer than most people would expect. From here, the clock starts ticking toward one of the most demanding supply chains in the seafood industry, getting a living animal from a Tasmanian wharf to a restaurant tank in Shanghai in under 2 days. At processing and export facilities, lobsters are graded again, this time by exact weight, shell condition, and vitality, since buyers in Asia are typically purchasing a live animal, not a frozen product. Workers check leg movement and tail response, rejecting anything showing signs of weakness before it is ever packed. Only the strongest, most active lobsters are approved for the long air journey ahead. Packing for live export is its own precise science. Lobsters are placed into foam-insulated boxes, chilled just enough to slow their metabolism into a kind of hibernation, cool enough to keep them calm and still, but never cold enough to injure them. Ice packs and damp padding maintain humidity inside the box for the entire flight, while airlines coordinate tightly controlled schedules to move these shipments directly from regional airports to international hubs. Within hours, pallets of live lobster are loaded onto cargo flights bound for Hong Kong, Shanghai, and Guangzhou, historically the largest buyers of this product anywhere in the world. At its peak, trade in this single species was worth more than $70 million a year to South Australia alone, making it one of the most valuable wild catch fisheries per ton landed on the entire continent. That trade has not always run smoothly. In 2020, Chinese import restrictions cut off the industry's largest market almost overnight, forcing fishermen and exporters to hold product, shift toward Hong Kong and Vietnam, and in some cases, release live lobsters back into the ocean simply because there was nowhere left to sell them. It took until the end of 2024 for direct trade to fully resume, a reminder that even a wild-caught, sustainably managed fishery can be reshaped overnight by decisions made far from the water it comes from. When the lobsters finally arrive at their destination, many are kept alive in restaurant display tanks until the moment of order, since freshness in this market is measured not in days, but in whether the animal is still moving when it reaches the kitchen. In fine dining rooms from Shanghai to Sydney, a single southern rock lobster can be served simply steamed to preserve its naturally sweet, firm flesh, or split and grilled with butter, a dish that can command well over $100 depending on size and season. Behind that price sits an entire regulatory system built specifically to keep the species from ever being overfished the way so many other lobster stocks around the world have been. Strict quotas, size limits, and mandatory release of breeding females mean the population has remained remarkably stable for decades, even as demand from Asia has grown. Scientists continue to track molt patterns and breeding success year by year, adjusting how many pots and how many boats are allowed to fish each season. In the end, the southern rock lobster tells a story most diners never think about while cracking open its shell. A story of cold southern water, careful hands sorting by color and size, a boat racing the clock back to port, and an international supply chain built entirely around keeping one animal alive until the very last moment before it reaches the plate. If you want to keep discovering the hidden journeys behind the seafood on your table, subscribe to Go Discover, because the next story from the ocean is already on its way.